So, ladies and gentlemen in chat, welcome to my complete Oath of the Gatewatch set review. Focus on this will be on pre-release, so it's going to be a focus on limited. Limited is where I'm strongest. Trying to give constructed evaluation has not bode well for me, but limited I'm pretty good at. So we're going to go over every single card in the full set. If you don't care, you've already looked over the set, made your own evaluations, great. But I would inquire you to stick around since I have a very particular methodology for looking through. Looking through the full card list. I've already looked through it multiple times. Oh, I don't mind if the viewers of the review on YouTube see the chat messages. That's fine. So, these are probably going to get uploaded on Saturday. We'll see. I have lots of time tomorrow. Okay. I didn't get my water, but we're going to go ahead and start with this. So we're going to begin our full set review with white cards, or rather, white CMC, since technically Devoid is a thing. We're going to begin with Eldrazi Displacer. 3 mana, 3/3 Devoid. 2 in a colorless. Exile another creature, then return it to the battlefield tapped. This effect is very huge. It's very hard. The fact that you can cast this card for just with white and use the ability for colorless and not need both is kind of sweet. I think this card is very, very powerful. Definitely a very strong rare. It just gives all your creatures protection. Any removal spell has to immediately target it first. It can't, unfortunately, protect itself, but you can abuse Enter the Battlefield triggers. I think this card is very strong. Alpha Protector is your obligatory 1/4 horn turtle with vigilance, so Yoshin Soldier. It's an ally, sure. We have to, as we're going through the set review, you have to also keep in mind that this set is not drafted solo. It also has BFC, so it's an ally. Sure, I'm not impressed. Sometimes you'll play it. It's like a 23rd playable, but you're not gonna be happy. Allied Reinforcements, 4 mana, put 2/2/2s. They're both allies, no vigilance, but this sort of effect in the past has been always like fair and completely playable. I think this card's gonna be fine. It's not gonna be superb, but it's certainly gonna be like a fine interaction, or like a fine way to get 2 creatures 2/2. Unfortunately, the 2/2s are not gonna be that relevant. There are reinforcements. I don't think it's gonna be real good because the average power toughness of this set is 2 power 3 toughness or 2 power 4 toughness. That's the most common. So I expect, like, when I was looking through BFZ, for example, I noticed that there was a cutoff that having 4 power is like substantially better than having 3 power, like a lot. Here, I think having 3 power is going to be very, very relevant. If you have a 3/3, it's just huge compared to the rest of the format. Yes, it has some BFZ involved, but mark my words, having 3 power and 3 toughness is one of the things we're looking for, or even 3 power 4 toughness. Call the Gatewatch. If you open a Planeswalker, congratulations, you have Planeswalker Tutor. I would not play this if you don't have a Planeswalker. Pretty straightforward. Dazzling Reflection is one of those spells that I guarantee you more people are going to play during pre-release than they actually should. Dazzling Reflection can be this really kind of cute removal spell because you take their creature, you use Dazzling Reflection when they attack with it, you block it, and then it doesn't deal damage, but you can still deal damage to it. But that's like absolute best case scenario. Absolute worst case scenario is you're completely behind on board and you use this as a bad fog, and then it's just terrible. So I don't think this card is like worth playing. Expedition Raptor. So it's a 5 mana 2/2 flyer, which normally is below the curve. You want a 5 mana 3/3 flyer with upside is what sort of becomes stock lately. But it has its upside as when it enters the battlefield, support 2. Now it's important to note it puts the counter on each of up to 2 other target creatures, so you cannot target itself. So it's not a 3/3 that comes into play with the +1/+1 counters. I think this card, like, I've been really disappointed with how support looks in this set, and Expedition Raptor does not seem like something I want to actively look to draft or put into my sealed pool. Pretty disappointed in it, and I don't think it's that good. The General Tozeri. So 5 mana 3/4. So I mean, it's got 3 power 4 toughness, so size-wise it's not bad. A little bit, a little bit overcosted for what it does. I think Raptor is pretty bad. I'm doing a full set review, so I'm gonna make my call. But when it comes into play, you can search your library for an ally. Sweet. Reveal it and put it in your hand. Okay. The second ability, you're probably not gonna trigger it that much. So you're probably not going to get that second ability often. So let's look at this in perspective of a 5-mana 3/4 comes into play, get an ally. I think that is okay. It's certainly playable. You jam into most white decks. You have decent allies you can fetch. I think it's just going to be very playable. I'm going to play it most of the time and be pretty content with it. If you ever activate the second ability, props to you. Immolating Glare is our quote-unquote Doomblade of the formats. It's 2 mana to start target attacking creature. Pretty sweet. Solid removal. I'd play basically every copy I pick up if I'm in white. I think it's very powerful. Very glad that they printed something like this at 2 mana, and very happy. Very happy. Ugh. God, do I hate Iona's Blessing. I guarantee you more people are going to play with Iona's Blessing than they really should. So it's a 4-mana enchantment. Enchanted creature that's +2/+2, vigilance, and can block an additional creature. Normally, like, right, I'm very disappointed in auras. Like, you need to make an aura pretty good for me to be sold on it. And this is not it. Yes, +2/+2, vigilance, and blocking an additional creature all work really, really well together. But Iona's Blessing, I just think, is incredibly subpar. There's not like that much bounce in the format, so it's not like Theros where you have bounce effects super great. But I'm not sold on Iona's Blessing. I don't think it's gonna be that good. Isolation Zone is sweet. One of the better white commons in the set. 4 mana, O-Ring, basically. Still, I mean, O-Ring at 3 mana was still very good. We had Stasis Snare with Flash, but that was an uncommon. But this card's still super powerful. It's 4 mana removal spell. I'm gonna take it pretty highly. I think it's super sweet. Core Scythe Master. 3 mana, 3/1. It's an ally and has first strike as long as it's attacking. Now, if you recall, we had a 2 mana 3/1 that can't be blocked by Eldrazi Scions, and this card is kind of. I mean, it's kind of better. It at least attacks a little bit better. The fact that it has 1 toughness means it's not gonna. I mean, it's not gonna block well. Let's get. I mean, that's pretty straightforward, right? But I think this card is like okay. You're probably gonna play a copy if you need to play a copy. You're not gonna play more than 2. It's nowhere near aggressive enough, I think, to fit a good aggressive deck, but it's certainly playable. Core Sky Climber. So it's 3 mana 3/2, so slightly better stats than the prior, but it can gain flying for 1 and a white. Now the question is a 3 power, 2 toughness worth investing 2 mana to gain flying? It is an ally, sweet, but the 2 toughness is such a downside. There's just so many 2 power flyers that are going to be running around, and it's certainly, again, it's one of those cards that's kind of playable. You don't want to play. I don't think this is a card that you want to play multiple copies of, but if you desperately need something to fill the 3-drop slot, this one's okay. Linvala, the Timely Reinforcements. So, apart from being a 6 mana 5/5 flyer, which is already great, if opponent has more life, you gain 5 life, and if opponent has more creatures, you get an angel. So, the best time you play this is when you're behind on board, behind on life, and this card just recovers you. Like, his card is just absurd. Super bomb. Play it in every white deck. I would play it in every white deck. And if you can ever get both triggers, you're probably just getting ahead here. So I'm a huge fan of Linvala. Make a stand. So the effect, when it comes to evaluating combat tricks, I look at several things. To begin with, CMC. 3 mana. 3 mana is like on that borderline where it's kind of easy to tell what's going on here. Sometimes you just run into it and you're like, well, if they have Make a Stand, I get blown out. The effect of getting +1/+1 indestructible is it's a good mix. It's a good mix. Can kill bigger creatures, and then indestructible means your creatures don't die. But oftentimes this is the sort of combat trick that you can see coming. So this is one of those cards I would say most people are going to play at pre-release if they're newer players, I would argue. So keep your eyes out. No, hey, if they've got 3 and a white and they make this sort of like really bad attack, you can try and play around it. But sometimes this card is just a total blow. It's got such a wide range between good and bad. I would not be surprised if this card just wins games, and I'd also be surprised if it's not bad. Like I would certainly, this is one of those cards that I think I would just need to play to be able to properly evaluate and see how it goes. But this card is occasionally just gonna blow people out, like the White Awaken spell that was a fog, same sort of thing. It can be just a total blowout sometimes. But then again, sometimes you just like have 2 creatures and +1/+1 indestructible doesn't do anything. So it's one of those cards I have to see. My gut tells me it's not gonna be fantastic, but certainly it can be okay. I hate McKindy Aeronaut. I hate 1/1 flyers for 1, and a 1/3 flyer for 2 is okay. It's not great. It blocks the air, I suppose. It's an ally, but if it were up to me, if I play 0 copies of McKindy Aeronaut during the entire stint of Limited, I'd probably be okay with it. Mighty Leap, the fun little reprint. Sometimes you just play a copy because it's an okay combat trick. Sometimes flying just puts a guy over the top and does that last bit of damage. It's fine, not great, not bad, just a fine combat trick. Moondust Vanguard with our first representation of Cohort in this review. So it's a 5-mana 3/3. So it's a 5-mana 3/3, which is fine. Body's kind of undercosted for 5 mana. But the Cohort ability, so you tap it and tap an untapped ally, and you put a +1/+1 counter on each creature you control. So, optimally you play Moondust Vanguard, and then play an ally, and then use the ability right away. I think it's very good. I don't think I'll ever be disappointed with this in my deck. You have to have an ally, but between, like, if you've noticed the white cards in this set, again, white is the color with very few Eldrazi, and Moondust Vanguard's another card that just rewards you for having allies. I think it's very playable. Certainly not a card I would pass often, and certainly a card I will play anytime I end up in white. Oath of Gideon, where I've had people tell me in Twitch stream that this card is standard playable, and I don't think it is. Basically, for the purposes of Limited, you are playing a 3-mana sorcery speed Raise the Alarm. Okay. Probably not going to play it, even in a dedicated ally deck, to be 100% honest. Sometimes you just need it, but my guess is this card is not up to par. Next, we have Ondu War Cleric. Bear with upside. With Cohort, tap it, and tap an untapped ally. You gain 2 life. Honestly, bears with upside are okay. You don't want to play all of them because you run out of bears, or run out of space. But listen, a bear with upside is a bear with upside. I will play a copy in the deck. Now on to Relief Captain. So it's a 4-mana 3/2, kind of undercosted, or kind of overcosted for the body. Enters the battlefield support 3. Now this is a card, like, I'm really disappointed in support, to be 100% honest. I don't think support is a very powerful mechanic. I think it's actually pretty weak. But Relief Captain seems like one of those cards that is actually not going to be that bad. You can, if you ever get the full support 3 trigger, like you get to put it on 3 different creatures, you're probably set. You're probably going to support 2 most of the time, if you're just going like 2-drop, 3-drop, 4-drop, and just curving out that way. But if you're able to get 3+1/+1 counters, the value you get out of 3+1/+1 counters, yes, it's distributed, but I think that's probably worth the 1 extra mana you're paying. Like 3 mana for a 3/2 is typically like okay for limited, as we already saw earlier. So if you're getting at least 1 mana's worth of +1/+1 counters, it's probably okay. Searing Light. Destroy target attacking or blocking creature with power 2 or less. There are a lot of 2-power creatures. This card is just dead in the late game, so you don't want to play too many copies of this. But Searing Light's like an okay removal spell. As I said, there are a lot of 2-power creatures. There's a lot of ways to put counters on it and change their power. And you can get blown out by you use Searing Light and then they have a pump spell and just get destroyed. But I think Searing Light's like, okay, I'd probably play a copy. I need to get a better feel of the format to see. This is one of those cards that is determining on the format that you're in determines how well positioned it's going to be. I'm probably going to try it out early on and see whether or not it's going to be. It's either going to be like okay or just terrible. It's basically one of those. I hope it errs on the side of okay. Shoulder to Shoulder. So 3 mana, support 2, draw a card. I don't think so. Basically, right, 3 mana divination is our baseline here, right? I'll play a 3 mana divination in my limited decks. So now the question is losing drawing a card worth 2+1/+1 counters on each of 2 target creatures? I don't really think it is. I think like sometimes you're just gonna want to play it. Like there is a synergy involving +1/+1 counters running around, but I don't think Shoulder to Shoulder is the card you're looking for. Spawnbinder Mage, 4 mana, 2/4. Again, look at the 2 power. Look at the 3 or more toughness. So it's tap it and tap an untied ally to tap a creature. So you're tapping 2 creatures to tap 1. Not good enough, I think. Not only that, it comes down kind of later in the game. It's like a desperation tapper. I'll probably play a copy, but I'm not going to be impressed with this card ever. Unless you've got a ton of like cheap little allies, then you play Spawnbinder Mage, make some tokens, and then tapping a token is essentially like tapping nothing. So that's okay, but I'm not a huge fan of this card. I think it's just like an okay, fine ally. Not super impressed with it. Step Glider, 5 mana, 2 power, 3+ toughness. I'm just gonna keep pointing this out until you guys get it. With Flying and Vigilance, okay, those 2 abilities go really well. And target creature with a +1/+1 counter gains Flying and Vigilance. So as I said, there is kind of this +1/+1 theme going around. This is a card that really, really rewards you for supporting, because if you put a counter on this guy, having a 3/5 Flying with Vigilance is just going to be so hard to beat. I think this card can be pretty powerful and has a very high ceiling. Not like Bomb Rare status by any stretch of the imagination, but certainly a card that I would be quite content picking up a copy of for my white decks, and especially with support cards. But it's not great. But if you're playing this is kind of like a dedicated support card. Like I'm treating this as a 3/5 rather than a 2/4 because I'm assuming that you have some way to get a counter, make the most of the second ability. I understand that you want power and flyers, but I think having this sort of ability is actually going to be pretty relevant. Bear with Upside, Stonehaven Outfitter. Unfortunately, there are like no good equipment in this set or the last set. There's like nothing good. So Stonehaven Outfitter, Bear with Upside. You don't want to play like a ton of bad cards just to make this card better. If you pick up a decent equipment, then maybe you play. I mean, it's a Bear with Upside, right? I will play Bears with Upside. You don't get punished too hard for it. You just don't want to play too many of them. But there's not much. There's not much in limited where that will reward you for taking an early Stonehaven Outfitter. So I would not treat this as a very high power card. Stoneforge Acolyte ain't no Stoneforge Mystic. So it's 1 mana 1/2. Okay, well it costs 1 less than Stoneforge Mystic, guys. But it has Cohort, so you tap it and tap an untapped ally. Look at the top 4 cards. You may reveal an equipment, put in your hand, put the best on the bottom. Again, like I said with the other one, there's not much good equipment, so not anything I particularly want to play. And then the last white card is kind of hidden there. It's a 3-mana 0/6 wall, so costs 1 more than Fortified Rampart, but it has basically Awaken 3. And that makes this card real sweet. Like, I was a huge fan of having a wall of rampart. Wall of rampart, good job. A fortified rampart. And this card, it's literally paying 3 mana for an 0/6 and a 3/3. That is pretty efficient. Not gonna lie. This is a card that is pretty good and limited. I would be happy to play a few copies of this. Not gonna lie, I'd be quite content to play Wall of Resurgence. And